What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. Today, we are going to be doing our first official recap of a game, Morgan. Lions had the Hall of Fame game yesterday against the Los Angeles Chargers. Didn't necessarily go the way that I think most fans expected the first, Lions game to go, but at the same time, this is the preseason. And nothing's going to look the way that you expect it to look. And hopefully this is not how things are going to look come the regular season, Morgan. But there's still a number of observations to kind of come from this game, right?
Yeah, and there's still things to glean from the game because you're trying to look at it just as objective reps more than anything, right? You've heard all the stuff about people really they're running vanilla schemes. They're not really showing you exotic looks, blah, blah, blah. You've heard it all, right? And it's for a reason. If you're looking for more evidence, if you're not an old head like myself and Miko, go Google the 2008 Detroit Lions preseason record if you ever just want to see what that is, and put it in the comments and let us know what you think if you don't know, because it might surprise you, right, Miko?
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think people have to realize too. Like, your preseason record means absolutely nothing, right? Do you remember the year where the Lions went undefeated, I think, in the preseason, and then I think they went on, was it the
that was 2008. I was being stupid. Yeah, guys. So for those of you who don't know, 4-0 in the preseason, 2008, 0-16, as you know. So it really doesn't matter. And it was week 1 last year. The Lions lost to a bad team, barely scored. It was the Giants. It was the Giants. I'm sorry, if anyone. I don't think Giants fans are watching this, but yeah, it's not, you don't want to look into the record. It was still some sloppy football. There was a lot of things to clean up, and I'm sure Dan Campbell would tell you otherwise, but you just can't really read into the scoreboard aspect of it, because as y'all know, it was 30 some people sat, from whether they just sat them or they're on NFI or they're injured right now. They're just a little dinged up. So don't look into any of to the final score. If we can tell you anything, if we're giving you some advice, some free advice, and just look at it. We have some good points here. I think that are some good talking points moving forward, as it's August 1st right now. So we're about 5 weeks away from real football in Lambeau Field. So keep that in mind, and hopefully, you guys might have some other ideas to put in the comments going off of what me and Miko are going to talk about from the game.
Yeah, and I think the best way, Morgan, to even talk about a preseason game in general is to keep it in the context of an evaluation, right? Because if you start taking it outside of that and you start trying to treat it too much like regular season football, you're going to put way too much weight on certain aspects or on certain players that aren't really fair. So in the nature of keeping this in the context of an evaluation, I think the best way of doing that is by doing just a simple stock up, stock down type of situation, because there are players that came into this game that were either already riding high and, maybe even improved their stock. And there's some players that came here that were probably riding high initially and probably lowered their stock by their performance, or vice versa. So let's start more so on the stock up side. So who is someone that you kind of noticed from the game that you're like, hey, came to the game and coming out of that game, I think they did themselves some favors, going into this next week of training camp?
Man, I'm gonna go with the obvious one. Ahmed Hassanin, my boy, he popped last night several times. Active hands off the line of scrimmage. He's got such quick feet, and he's so athletic out there. I can't wait until he's at a 61, man. That is a foul number for our boy. We don't like that. Ahmed popped several times. He really active hands, beating blockers right off from the get-go, keeping his eyes, veteran stuff. He's only been playing the game for 6 years now. So he's active and violent with his hands while also keeping his eyes in the backfield. And that's how you make tackles for loss, man. You have to be doing two things at once. You can't stare at the blocker because you're not going to be able to find the football when it's time to. So that's 101. But it looked good last night. Was executing some nice moves, right? It started getting me thinking about what he said about watching Hutchinson. And I was like, I can see you've been watching 97 a little bit, right? So don't you think some of that he's hitting them with some sauce?
It was definitely very evident, like you said, active feet, being able to really try to set up blockers and things like that, getting his hands on guys, being able to shed blockers, whether it were tackles or tight ends. He did, I'm right there with you. He did a really good job. And I think the thing, like you said, that I was so most impressed with was his eye discipline. Typically guys like himself that are maybe a little bit more raw and that are specifically coming off a college season where they got a lot of sack production, one of the things that they end up sometimes doing is like hunting, right? They're just hunting for the quarterback, and they're not being as disciplined as they need to be in the run game. That did a great job on a number of occasions, either keeping his feet chopping during read option type plays, or again crashing down the line to clean up a run play on the backside. Those are the types of things that if you're a Kelvin Shepherd, if you're a Casey Rogers type of thing, like you're really excited about what he's put on tape as a young defensive lineman. And maybe that's the type of stuff that, like, hey, maybe he gets even more snaps, in the next preseason game. Because I think that's probably like my only downside of Ahmed was like, I wish I could have seen even more of him throughout this game.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll get more in the upcoming preseason games. And then also some of these joint practices coming up. I want to see how he looks against a starting tackle. I forget who the Lions' first joint practice opponent is, but I want to see how he looks against some starting caliber offensive linemen, because then that would really get me excited. You know what I mean? Like I'm already really excited because for me, it's all about like a trajectory, right? And like progress is one of Jeremy's favorite things, but progress isn't linear. But you look at it for Ahmed, if he's already picking up some of this stuff this early on, well, you got to think about what's he going to look like by December and January, hopefully, because then you're looking, if he can give you 15 to 20 snaps late in the season of just pure unleaded gasoline and just spotting 97 when he needs a breathe or a shot of Gatorade or whatever.
Yeah.
That's all you need. All right. From Ahmed this year. And then in 2026 and beyond, we might be cooking with some peanut oil, but yeah. And this year, that's all I'm really looking for him. And if we stay on this trajectory, we could get there.
Yeah. And to your point earlier, the Lions' first joint practice against the Dolphins. So again, that'll be his first opportunity to maybe, get some run. At least, and I think in a game like he just had, I think that at least should afford him maybe a few more of those opportunities to get in the mix, more so with the second team, definitely get a couple snaps here and there with the first team just to see how he can handle those things and see if he can retain some of the coaching that he's getting from this defensive coaching staff. For me personally, I think one of my stock up guys, it's another rookie, but Isaac TeSlaa really popped last night. I think showing off the things that we saw him do really well at Arkansas, which is operate and run routes in space, have great strong hands, being able to finish yards after the catch and things like that. I thought he looked really good, and I can definitely see a role for him in this offense. Not somebody that's probably going to get a ton of snaps, but if somebody that you want to just continue to mix up your receiving core and give defenses different looks, he's a guy that really popped in a positive way for me.
Yeah, almost in like an Ahmed fashion this year. If he can, put on, like, if he can be productive this year and push make his way onto the field, like give the coaching staff no other option, that's amazing, because those are both players that we kind of knew they might need a little bit of time, a little bit more seasoning to get them right, to get them where they need to be at a professional level. We are going to drop a film study of Ahmed, so definitely, be in tune for that. I'm excited for that one. But yeah, TeSlaa looked really good to me. There was even that rep, bro. Someone shared it. It was one of the POD staff. It might have been Jeremy or Eric, but of when he was a gunner.
Yeah.
Boy, and because y'all know, man, if you know special teams at all, gunners are the athletes out there, okay? They're receivers, they're DBs, safeties sometimes, but they're guys who are strong and they can run. You have to be able to do that, to be on punt return or punt coverage in this case. And TeSlaa split the two blockers and just hit R2, bro. Just got down there, forced the fair catch, and I was like, oh boy, this guy can run. I don't know if you saw that joint I shared from the Elvis movie.
That was but I think I'm with you. That surprised me because we've heard a lot about Dominic Lovett out there, as far as being involved in the special team stuff. And I don't know why I didn't connect the dots that maybe, TeSlaa was getting some of those same opportunities, but for him to show that in a game and show hey, it's another thing that he can do if you want to have him on the active game day roster. He doesn't have to be out there running a ton of routes, but if you can get him out there, he can be a solid gunner. That's a nice added piece to him in his rookie season so that he can continue to get some experience and have a nice role for him. It kind of goes back to the Inside the Den episode that they dropped, and Dan even said it kind of after they drafted him, they already have a role in mind for him. And I think that doesn't just include on offense. I think that probably does extend to special teams as well.
Yeah, 100%, Miko. If he can do stuff like that, if he can be a starting caliber gunner, and then if they can even work him in some of these packages on offense, right? Where a lot of the times now it's trendy to have your receiver motion into like the C gap, like on a duo concept, right? To climb to the second level and get the linebacker or the safety or whoever. Shoot, to Tesla, as big as he is and the way he runs and seeks out contact, I can see him being one of those guys that the coaching staff's like, yeah, you're going to go down here and you're going to ear hole this linebacker for us so we can get Jameer or Monty to the second level, because that's something that's definitely in his bag right now. So it was cool to see him be so productive and happy, because I think he's going to be active just because he can be someone who can play the big Y in a pinch if someone gets dinged up, or you can obviously have him out there at the X. It's just him going to be taking like the mental stuff, just breaking it down. Don't get too overwhelmed, right? Like just, because it's a lot for him going from where he was in college to what they're doing in Detroit.
No, 100%. Anybody else that stood out to you that you're like, you know what, stock up on this player coming out of the first preseason game?
Rock Ya-Sin. I know you and me are both fans of Rock Ya-Sin. I was when he was coming out. S-tier name too, and the man hits like a name, Rock Ya-Sin.
Yeah.
Okay, like he had a couple nice sticks last night, and I just think he's going to be really valuable depth. Like him, Avonte Maddox, Detroit native. Like they didn't get many snaps because I think the coaching staff was like, "We've seen what we need to see. Come on and join the guys eating sunflower seeds and hot dogs and chill out, take a seat." So you did see a little bit of that, but I was happy to see Rock Ya-Sin be so productive, just because we know how injuries accrue in the secondary. Hopefully they don't this year, but it's nice to have players like him in the fold. What about you?
Yeah, Rock Ya-Sin was definitely one of the guys that stood out to me. I don't think he was targeted like in the passing game at all. So again, that's usually a good sign that you're probably holding things down well on your side of the field. Again, possible that that plays weren't designed to go to his side of the field either, but still, for the most part, like you said, showed up big in the run game, which is something that you have to do in this secondary if you want to be a part of this defense. It's kind of like the flip side of the offense, where like, hey, if you don't block, you don't get to be a part of the wide receiver core. On the defensive side, if you don't tackle in the run game, it's going to be really hard for you to see the field. So I thought Rock Ya-Sin did really well in that game, in that aspect of the game. Last one for me, I'm going to go Dominic Lovett. It was a little up and down for Dominic Lovett, but I'm still going to put it as a stock up, because I still think his bright spots were that bright, where for a 7th round pick, like you and I talked about this even when he was drafted, like we weren't sure where he was going to fit and like how the Lions were going to utilize another wide receiver, especially another smaller wide receiver. And I thought he showed really good versatility in all aspects of the game. We saw him get to do punt return. We saw him got to be a gunner out there. We saw him get involved in the passing game. Had a couple drops, had an interception that was kind of taken from him and things of that nature. But I still thought he ran crisp routes, on some of the shorter and intermediate routes, showed, good run after the catch in certain situations like that as well. So maybe not as clean of a route to the active roster like maybe Isaac Tesla will have, but someone that I'm very interested in seeing how he probably develops over the course of a season, because he is someone, put it this way, Morgan, when he was first drafted, I think people immediately went to like, oh, this is the Khalif replacement. And I think a lot of us were quick to like scoff at that, to be like, nah, like Khalif has a very specific role. I'm not saying it's going to happen this year. I'm not even going to say it's happening next year, but I can definitely see that potential in Dominic Lovett after this first preseason game, at least a glimmer of it, in terms of if you want him to be that Khalif Raymond type for your, if he continues to develop like on this type of like upward trend, he can probably be that in a couple years.
Yeah, and like you said, there was a couple hiccups here and there, but you can tell he's comes from a good program like Georgia. Like they're playing under Kirby Smart, man. Say what you will about some of their off the field stuff, but we know what kind of football players they put out. And I can see it with Lovett. I think his floor is like practice squad. You know what I mean? I still think he has a shot at making the active roster, because as you mentioned, he can do so much from a special team standpoint. Returning. Being a gunner, blocker, you name it. And just a couple times, I think some of that's just maybe nerves too. They're playing in the Hall of Fame game. He'd be one I would look for to settle in next preseason game when not everybody's watching and everyone's like, oh, we're back. And then everyone complains about how bad the football is. I hate social media sometimes. Y'all bug me, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? Watch it or not. You knew what it was going to be. Did you think it was going to be some awesome football? I don't know. I wanted to get that little rant out of there. Like, what are we doing? I'm like, you know what we're doing. We do this every year. Okay.
We're evaluating talent. Like, that's the answer. If you're asking the question during a preseason game of what are we doing, it's called evaluating talent.
Come on, man. Exactly. I thought that was so goofy, but people do it every year. But yeah, I see the vision with Lovett. And he could be, to your point, the Lions do need to have some cost savings here and there on like certain veterans. That could be a spot where that could happen. And we love Kali Freeman on this channel and POD in general still, but something to keep in mind going into next year, because we talked about all the guys the Lions got to pay.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they're stock up guys, that means we got to have stock down guys. And again, this doesn't mean that these guys are close to being cut. That doesn't mean that these guys need to be replaced immediately. Again, not the type of performance that we were probably expecting from them, you know, coming out of this game. I'll go first. First guy that kind of comes to mind is Kingsley Eguakun. I had really high expectations for Kingsley going into this game, and it just didn't really resonate once I turned on the tape, right? I think there were a couple plays during the actual game that you can kind of see like, oh, he's getting kind of beat here, or he's, you know, getting pushed to the backfield. But then I think he slowly starts to kind of like fade into the background. But when you turn on that all 22, Morgan, like it shows up a lot more consistently that he was just like physically overmatched, specifically whenever he had to go head up with any of the D tackles that the Chargers had over there. And I know you've made a point to point this out. Like Kingsley's not the biggest center. And so maybe that is part of the reason why he struggled a bit yesterday.
Yeah, like so much offensive line, and football heads will tell you this, like so much of it is body type, right? And for Kingsley, if he's going to make it as a professional center in the NFL, it's a special breed because it's like Jason Kelsey and like a few others that are like sub 300 pounds, like 290-ish and flourishing. It's just tough, man. Sometimes you're playing guys that have 60, 70, 80 pounds on you, depending on who you're playing, like Vita Vea, for instance, right? These super freaky, athletic, heavy dudes. So yeah, Kingsley had a couple rough reps where he got relocated into the pocket, but that was always going to be like a struggle for him. I think it really clicked for me was that OTA I covered because he was there, and I was like, oh, he can move, right? When he's out there, when they were doing the little throwing it to the offensive lineman drill, but then he got closer to me, and I was like, oh yeah, he's not super big either. Tough way to live in a game full of giants, right, Miko?
Yeah, especially when you're playing in the interior and you got to be able to anchor and you got to be able to occupy space well, because there were a number of plays yesterday where, you know, Craig Reynolds is trying to run to either the left or the right, which is the other thing that's crazy. It's not like he's trying to run off of Kingsley's back, but because Kingsley's getting driven into the backfield, it's minor adjustments, right? That take something from being a 3 to 4 yard gain to now it's like you're barely making it to the line of scrimmage because the running back has to adjust their momentum or things like that. And so it was a rough day for Kingsley, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Lions address that, because I know he's been bouncing back and forth between center and guard. But this is one where, like I said, if you turn on the tape, it's like, man, you're being physically outmatched. He knows where to be, and he's even getting there. It's just once the horns lock up, it's like, oh, there's a strength mismatch here.
Yeah, a little bit of a discrepancy. And you see it at every level of football, man. I've seen a lot of smaller offensive linemen who are really technically sound with their footwork, their hand placement, you name it. But if my guy's got 45 pounds on you, it's going to be kind of tough, Bubba. So, yeah, we'll have to see how Kingsley, that'll be another one to watch as joint practices get rolling too, because he was having problems there. What does happen when you're playing against an NFL caliber? I mean, I know we have DJ Reader and other guys like that, Roy Lopez in the fold, but I'm not sure how many reps Kingsley sees against those guys, if any. Just, it's a tough match, man. So that'll be someone to keep an eye on, because it would be nice for him to carve out a backup center role, because, just more depth is always nice. I think the Lions are going to need it.
I think the Lions are going to need like a true backup center, and that's what makes that battle between him, Nice, Cologne, I believe, as well. Like those three guys, like really are going to have, like someone's going to have to separate themselves. I thought Cologne actually, like on a side note, had a pretty good game in the second half, right? That third and fourth unit was a little bit of a mixed bag, but I thought Cologne played pretty well in comparison to what I saw from Kingsley in the first. But anybody else from you that you kind of have like a little bit of a stock down on?
Man, it pains me, but Brodric Martin, I wanted to see him do something, anything. Like, it's telling. I don't even know. I'd have to go look and see how many snaps he got. But I don't think it was a ton, which is telling, because if they were still like, hey, we really need to see, like, they give him, even as a defensive tackle, like 35, 40 snaps would have been great. Just a lot for a big guy. But even when he was out there, some tough reps, man. And it's do or die time for Brodric at this point. And I feel like it's almost written in pen at this point as to what his fate holds in terms of a roster spot. So it's such unfortunate. You always want Brad's picks to hit, but realistic, not every single one can. So even players miss here and there, right, Nico?
No, absolutely. And I think it was a mixed bag for a good portion of the defense, like interior defensive line. Like Pat O'Connor was like in that same mix as like Rock Ya-Sin and Avonte Maddox, where it's like, okay, the Lions saw what he had to do, and it's like, all right, come on out. And that gave a lot more opportunities for guys like Raekwon Williams, like Miles Adams. And the fact that like Brodric wasn't more in the mix, I think is fairly telling that like, okay, he is kind of more on the outside looking in. And it's not like you're expecting, at least I'm not expecting. I don't know what other fans are expecting, Morgan. I'm not expecting like crazy pass rush ability from Brodric, but you would expect him to be a little bit more stout in the run game. I think he had a handful of snaps here and there where it didn't look too bad, but to your overall point, it's a guy that was a fairly high draft pick and he's not popping. Right, not in the same way that we talk about Ahmed popping, not in the same way that we would probably talk about Nate Lynn popping off the screen and things like that. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be you making the play, but even just disrupting the play and helping other players make plays would be a good sign for Brodric Martin at this point.
Exactly what you said, Miko. Like, we're not looking for anything crazy, but the sad thing is Brodric's issue coming out of Western Kentucky was pad level. And here in August of 2025, still pad level. And that's the issue. That's why he can't generate a lot of knockback and reset the line of scrimmage. And it's also why he's not really ready to handle NFL double teams yet and why he can get, moved off his spot, So it's kind of the same old. And even though it's a different defensive line coach with Casey Rogers, it's more of the same with what we're seeing on tape from Brodric.
Yeah. One last player that I'll kind of point out, and it also on the defensive side, it was a little bit tough watching Trevor Nowaske out there playing. A guy that contributed fairly heavily last year, especially once Derek Barnes went down in terms of playing that Sam role. And he looked fine, I would say, like when it came down to defending the run. But my issue with it was like it felt like he was trying to defend on the run on like every play. And then when he would realize that it was pass, it was like, you don't have the athleticism to be able to cover up for the mental mistake that you just made, which is you thought it was run, it's pass. Now you have to try and get into space and you just look lost trying to do it. And so that's another guy. I wouldn't say he's in danger of losing his spot because I think he's probably the closest to probably like backing up Derek Barnes at that Sam role, but he still has a long way to go, in my opinion. And really grasping and understanding how the Lions want him to play it.
Yeah, and that's a skill, I don't think people realize, like converting from like the run defense to rushing the pass, like going from run to pass, right? And you have to have a certain like mindset about it with like your little checklist and like going through and making sure you're on the right page. And then you also have to have the athleticism to do what you need to do. And Nowaske kind of looked pretty rough a couple of times. And it's just crazy to think the Lions were winning so many games last year when they were playing Nowaske, Ezekiel Turner, Jamal Adams, who's the other linebacker that we had in here for a little bit, the kid from West Virginia, David Long.
Yep.
Like, man, it's pretty incredible, to be honest with you. So, yeah, it wasn't the best showing from Nowaske, but I do agree with you. He's probably the closest that you could use, because the Lions like having the ability to go with that 5-man front with the Sam involved. They like having that ability. So I guess keeping Nowaske, and he's a good special teamer for all intents and purposes. So I'm not going to beat them up for keeping him, but yeah, not my favorite when he has to drop into space or surf and keep his hips square to the line of scrimmage. It can get a little rough.
Yeah, but I think that's why it's again, going back to what we were saying at the beginning of this video, it's why it's an evaluation, right? It's something that Kelvin Shepherd and the rest of this coaching staff can take back to him and other members of this defense, put it on tape and say like, hey guys, like this has to get cleaned up. If you want to be here, if you want to make this final 53, if you want to be part of the team that's going, into the regular season and not just part of the practice squad, which again, not to poo-poo the practice squad, because here in Detroit, the practice squad is still seen as very valuable. But you got to be able to do some of these things well. It's, again, making those adjustments, from a technical standpoint, if it's pad level, if it's hand usage, if it's being able to diagnose things mentally. We didn't really necessarily talk about the quarterbacks in this video. And honestly, if you guys do want to see and hear about the quarterback play, I know Jeremy and Eric did their breakdown yesterday, like right after the game for Pride of Detroit Direct subscribers. So if you have that, I would highly suggest you guys check that out. But there's so many things that happened in this game that it can't just be so black and white of this player's terrible and this player's awesome. I think there is enough that happened in that game to be like, hey, this player's trending along the way that we would expect them to. Maybe this player's excelling faster than I thought they would. And then there's a couple players that you look like, hey, like they seem to be lagging behind. And I think that's what needs to be like kept in mind, whether it's training camp observations, whether it's joint practices, or the rest of these preseason games that the Lions are going to play. Because guys, we're not probably going to see much of the starters or see the starters probably at all this entire preseason.
No, as we've said, Dan Campbell likes to get the starters and like the people who play a lot of regular season reps. They get those reps in those joint practices when it's even more controlled. Get them their reps and, bubble wrap until the season, as people say. And yeah, I just would look for going forward from like, because we know who's going to play for the most part, and it's not the starters. You just want cleaner football. Like even Nowaske, right? He's seen a lot of regular season snaps, when compared to a lot of those guys who's on the field. But then he lines up offsides twice. So yeah. Come on, we gotta do better there. And I'm sure that's the stuff Dan Campbell and the rest of the coaching staff's talking about today. Can't have that.
Yeah, it's the mental errors, it's the technical stuff, it's the things that they are expecting you to do well. Because at the end of the day, the preseason is also a good reminder for fans as well. The team on the other side is trying to execute things as well. Like this isn't just a beat 'em up like type of football game where you get to do everything and be successful at it. Like that opposing team is trying to establish things as well. So it's a good reminder, right? It was still good to see football on TV, even though it wasn't the cleanest of football and even though it wasn't the most successful. But I think there are still plenty of things that like you and I just kind of went through, and I think a lot of other fans should as well. Like you have mental notes going through the rest of this offseason of like, let's see if these players continue to trend up. Let's see if anyone has a setback. Let's see if someone can change the narrative within the next few weeks to go from, roster bubble to like firmly on the roster, in a couple of weeks. And I think a couple of guys did that in just their first game of inching closer to that. And I think there's a couple of guys that probably went backwards, but those are just our opinions, guys. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What did really stood out to you most from this first preseason game? How are you feeling going into, this third week of training camp, as well as what are you hoping to, who are you hoping steps up in a big way throughout the rest of this offseason? Let us know that in the comment section below. Also, if you were looking for any more additional feedback or insight from yesterday's game or any additional coverage from it, you can always check out prideofdetroit.com or check out Pride of Detroit Direct, which is linked in our description. That is our paid subscription that you pay $50 for the entire year. You get a bunch of video content. You get some extra written content as well. It's a great added bonus to what we are already providing to you over here on YouTube as well as the website. So definitely check that out if you're looking for any more additional Lions content as well. And if you want to stay locked into what we're doing over here on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, drop us a comment down below. All of those things will keep it that much easier for you to find our content going forward. And yeah, with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll see you guys in the next one.